this is rare. This is not unlike a unicorn prancing through the CBSN workspace. Adriana Diaz here in person.
It's so good to be here.
It's great to have you here, and boy, I can only imagine the jarring personal aspect, frankly, of being in North Korea, sitting down for the interview that we just saw there, and being all the way here. But let's go back there for a minute. We saw the discussion of what could come of relations between the two countries when we have a new president. What challenges, though, will the new president face in dealing with a country that seems as though it has no real interest in making any sort of change, sanctions or no? Right.
It's an enormous challenge. They are resolute. They say, we are pursuing nuclear weapons simply to defend us, and frankly, because of the United States. Because the United States, they say, has more than 1,000 nuclear weapons stationed in South Korea. So they say, we can't give up our one defense. We know that most of the world is against us. But they say that they are open to denuclearizing if everybody else does. So that's their perspective. Donald Trump has said that he'd be willing to sit down with Kim Jong-un. There are hurdles that would have to be met and passed in order for that to happen. One person told us that what they want to see, the U.S. has to give something up in order for them to really come to the table. So they want the U.S. out of South Korea. They want no nuclear threat that they say is coming from the U.S. and some other things in order to even have a meeting. So there are huge obstacles, and this is not a country that wants to play ball with the rest of the world and wants to follow what the U.S. wants. They feel like South Korea and other countries are quote-unquote puppets of the U.S. They talk about American imperialism. You know, they are really in a wartime mentality because the Korean War never officially ended. And you feel it in a sense when
I was going to say, you know, that harkens back to decades ago. Interestingly, we've had many foreign policy experts on the program speak to the fact that when you get past the immediacy of the humanitarian crisis in the Middle East and Syria, that North Korea is really the issue that looms. But it also seems what we're really talking about is a proxy for China. And to that end, how independent do North Korean leanings feel to you now, especially having reported from inside the country?
China feels like it has a responsibility to North Korea. They're their comrades, they're communist neighbors, and they've had a very close relationship throughout history. North Korea is enormously reliant on China. 90% of trade that North Korea does is with China. So China is injecting currency into their government, and some of that currency is going to the nuclear program. The current sanctions are supposed to block that, but the Chinese are using a humanitarian loophole to continue trading with North Korea. So it's not having the intended goal. But the Chinese say they're also committed to denuclearizing North Korea. They certainly oppose their nuclear program. But the North Koreans are their friends, so they're trying to work out a diplomatic way to bring a little bit more stability.
And that's John Kerry's comments in your piece that we just saw. There in Pyongyang, I suppose people who, if you know somebody who knows somebody who's been to North Korea, that the tales that come back are remarkable. You know, I know that earlier today you were saying nobody's heard of Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton there. What is it like there with regard to everyday life?
It is very unusual, to say the least. Look, you have no independence. You're always with a government guide. You can't leave the hotel. You can't travel or go or report on what you want. They make decisions about where you should go and what you should see and who you should talk to. We weren't allowed to approach people on the street to try to do interviews. We were allowed to talk to people at the places where they took us, but we don't know if those people were really there for us or if it was a more organic situation. We couldn't go into businesses. We wanted to really see how these sanctions are affecting their country, and it was hard to tell because we really didn't have insight into their economy.
How, just on the streets, how interested in you do the citizens seem? Which is to ask, in certain places where just, let's say, Westerners don't go, or maybe television cameras don't go, you will be surrounded by people who find you and your coworkers curious, your technology curious. What's it like there?
I think we stood out like a sore thumb. And people had probably never seen someone that looked like me in North Korea. And little kids really, like, they would see us and they go, but then they got excited and they were curious, and we saw them watching us, out of the corner of their eye. It was an unusual experience, but at the end of the day, once you approach someone, once you start talking to them, they're just people like all of us. Yeah. And they're curious about you and where you're from. And we would tell them that we were American, and they didn't have a problem with that. But they did say, we hate your country and your government, but we think American people are okay. I spoke to this little boy at a school, and he said, the Americans are bad to us. They've always been against us in their history. I said, well, I'm American. And he said, oh, really? And I said, what do you think about that? He goes, well, if you like me and I like you, it's okay. So we need a little bit more of that.
Geopolitics and diplomacy all at once. Look, from the bridge that you couldn't pay me enough money to get to important work, really vital work here. It's great. Everything you're doing over there is great. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. I guess we'll see you in like a year and a half or so. Adriana Diaz, as always.